Hello, friends. My. Isn't life funny? My name is Dan Nelson. Some of you know that. Some of you who will be joining us shortly, I assume, at the moment. It seems my draw has diminished. We'll find out shortly. There we go. A few people, a few old friends. If you're an old friend, please say hi. I have missed you guys. Something fierce, as they say. I don't know who says that, but I guess I say it. I've missed you something fierce. Life is funny, isn't it? Sometimes big surprises. First off, you'll notice that I didn't call this Daily Art Adventure. I might go back to that, but at the moment it seems rather dishonest, if not ludicrous, to call it a Daily Art Adventure when I haven't been online for nearly a month. Wow. The last broadcast I did was on Christmas Eve when I was doing a little painting of Santa. So we got lots to talk about besides painting. I want to let you know a little bit about what's going on. And again, as I see people getting on here, if you're an old friend, please say hi. I got a little sneaking insecurity that I've lost all my old friends. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. So for those of you who maybe just stumbled on this and you don't know me at all and you're watching me for the first time, well, welcome. Let me give you a little bit of background of what's this guy mumbling about. Well, I'm an artist. You could see that, maybe. And for the last 4 years, I've broadcasted. I think past tense of broadcasted is actually broadcast, but be that as it may, I've broadcasted an average of 5 times a week. So for me to go over the last 4 years, I did 1,004 broadcasts, and now I started broadcasting about 13 years ago. But for the last 4 years, I've done Daily Art Adventures, abbreviated DAA, and that's what you can see there on my channel. Again, over 1,000, just over 1,000 of those. Broadcasting, again, nearly every day, workday of the week. And now I find myself in a place where I have not done a broadcast in nearly 4 weeks. So what's going on? Well, what's going on, and I know I'm perfectly healthy, thank you very much, perfectly fine. My lifestyle changed, my job changed, my job description changed, my daily, did not see this coming. This is not a result of my careful planning or anything like that. It's a long story, and I'll dribble it out little by little. I don't want to tell you the whole thing right now because it'd be too long of a story, and you don't have time for that. But basically, much to my surprise, I transitioned from being a full-time artist to being, it's hard to say exactly what I am, a full-time holy man. That sounds pretty. In America, the most common name for a person like me is pastor. I became a full-time pastor of a church, if you will. But that is that description would need quite a bit of modifiers. Some very, very atypical pastor. So I'll embrace that term, but it requires some explanation. I don't preach much. We do have a group of people that meets together regularly on Sunday morning, so that part's pretty regular, pretty traditional, eh? I was born in Canada, by the way, so I still have a little bit of Canadian in me. That gives me... So we do meet on Sunday morning. And I want to get off this topic soon and get on to a little bit more directly to do with what I'm doing here today, but just a little background to catch some of you up. Our church, if you call it that, and we don't call it that exactly, but anyway, it meets outdoors in a parking lot. It's sort of coinciding, if you will, coincident with the era of coronavirus. Our church meets outdoors in a parking lot in the heart of downtown Raleigh, right in the very, very heart of our city. And I don't preach much. Ironically, didn't see this coming. It's not the result of some great plan of ours or anything. My wife actually, we do have a sound system and a microphone, a bunch of microphones. My wife actually preaches a lot more than I do. We don't call it preaching, but she talks on a microphone a lot more than I do. My primary role is I'm the musician. I play music. During our gatherings, I play music essentially from start to finish. In fact, before that, I start playing music before people even get there. And the instruments that I play are several. The joke is I play 50 instruments, but that is a joke. Well, it is and it isn't. When I'm all set up with all my stuff, I am in fact surrounded by 50 different musical instruments, but I just say that for shock value. The reason there's 50 instruments is one of the instruments I play is a harmonica or blues harp. And some of you may know that most harmonicas play in only one key. So if you want to play in all 12 keys, you have to have 12 harmonicas. Check, got that. And then there are lower harmonicas, lower pitched. So I've got 3 lower ones and 2 minor ones and 1 duplicate and 1 chromatic. So on my little harmonica stand there, I have 19 harmonicas. Okay, but now that makes sense. One of the other instruments I play is flutes, whistles, recorders. And last count, I had, I think, 21 flutes, whistles, and recorders. So 21 plus, that's 40 right there, right? So that's why I play 50 instruments. That's why the joke is I play 50 instruments. Just between the harmonicas and the whistles, I have 40 instruments. So the other 10 are 3 or 4 guitars, trumpet, flugelhorn, French horn, a couple saxophones, and voila, before you know it, I've got 50 instruments and a whole pile of electronic gizmos. So that's what I do. I play. My job is to literally establish the atmosphere, shift the atmosphere even, I like to say. That's my, I preach, that is to say, talk on the microphone a little bit, pretty much each week, more or less. But my wife does a lot more than I do. All right, so that's enough of that. I'll give more explanation of how this got started later, and nobody's saying anything yet. You guys are making me nervous now. Maybe I'm making you nervous, like, what? Don't be nervous. I am doing a painting here of my precious granddaughter, Tali. Her full name is Talia, which is a Hebrew word for dew of heaven. And she is just as precious as she looks. And the reason I'm doing a painting of Tali, or Talia, is because a couple years ago, some of you might, this was the subject of several daily art adventures. A couple years ago, this is her older sister, Lake. And of course, if I did a painting of Lake, that means absolutely I have to do a painting of Tali. So that's what I'm doing. So there's Lake a couple years ago. And this is Tali. And some of you regulars, none of whom are talking to me yet, none of you are talking to me yet. And if you're a newcomer, you don't have to talk to me. I'm just ragging on the regulars who you know who you are. If you're not a regular, you're more than welcome just to sit there in complete anonymity and watch. So I do want to talk about a little bit more about my art, that is to say in general. I fully expect to be doing artwork and doing it online and painting considerably more than once a month, as I have been doing this past month. Okay, so I think that this past month will be the exception, not the rule. There's been quite a bit of adjusting to my new job description that has kept me away from my easel and my broadcast. So I expect that kind of thing to taper down as the months go by. And I expect to be able to broadcast probably not 5 times a week like I have for several years. But here's the big shift, I think, that will be taking place in my broadcast. And there it is reflect. Now, we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to stick. I don't know if you saw the title to this broadcast. I called it Adventures in Beauty. I decided to go ahead, and I've been thinking about it for weeks. I'm not positive that name is going to stick, but I decided to go ahead and put it on this broadcast. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. What's the difference between Adventures in Beauty and Daily Art Adventures? And the big difference is, and this is in keeping with the transition that my wife and I have just gone through and are still going through. For 16 years, I've been a very, very focused, hardworking, full-time artist. During all those years, music was my hobby, a serious hobby. I practiced nearly every day. But it was my hobby, and art was my life. The simplest way to put it is those two have now reversed. So I am now more like a full-time musician and a part-time artist. That will come as a big surprise, likely, to those of you who've been following me as an artist. And the obvious, I guess, what's the word? Upshot, the obvious inference that can be drawn from that that statement is, one way to put it is, well, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding something. All right, just not going to worry about how it sounds. I'll soften it this way. I am probably, I'm just as good a musician as I am an artist. At least I am just as serious of a musician as I am an artist. And in fact, truth be told, I'm probably a more serious musician than I am an artist. That is to say, in many ways, I take my music more intensely and seriously. It's closer to the core of my identity. I was a full-time artist largely because I had to pay the bills. Now, I loved being a full-time artist, don't get me wrong. But now I'm at a different stage of life, and my bills are being paid by the generous, outrageous, crazy giving of our friends, sometimes traditionally called parishioners. That's a funny old-fashioned name, not at all appropriate for our stage of life, but still a funny old-fashioned, a name, you know what I mean when I say parishioners. It is funny, it's a funny word on so many levels. Anyway, so I'm not making my living primarily from my art anymore. I'm making a living from being a spiritual leader / pastor, and my primary role in that is musician. Funny, huh? I think it's funny. I think it's great. I'm having the time of my life. If you'd put a gun to my head at any point in the last 19 years and said, okay, would you rather be a full-time musician or a full-time artist? I would have said musician. And again, I've played those cards kind of close to my chest because there's no point in, messing with y'all, because you knew me as an artist. Now, besides that, I'm also a writer, a teacher, a communicator. And so now my writing life has been largely shut up, hemmed in the last 16 years, and I have often felt bad about that. It's like, oh man, I wish I could write. And now all of a sudden, I'm in fact released to do more writing. So I'm very excited about that. I've already done some, look forward to doing more. I write on a number of topics. They tend to coalesce around philosophical, historical, spiritual issues. And I'm saying, choosing my words pretty carefully. So not religious per se, but philosophical. That's even closer. I'm more of a philosopher than I am a musician, and I'm more of a musician than I am an artist. And so now I have a good excuse for doing bad paintings. I just dawned on me right that moment. It's like, hey, wait a minute. I got the perfect excuse. Well, I'm not very good at portraiture, you see. Art's just my hobby. What do you think? Will it fly? You better say no. No, sure as heck, no, that will not fly. No. Oh. You guys are being remarkably quiet. Are you all in shock? What's going on here? So this is obviously a candid shot taken by my daughter, who is Tali's mother, as you can imagine. for several months, I would take pictures of Tali every once in a while, and then I would remind everybody else, somebody please take a good picture of Tali. I need to do a painting. So finally, we finally got a good picture of this darling girl. She is 6 years old. Her big sister Lake is turning 8 next week. Oh, and for you regulars again, I haven't told you yet, they are gone. They have moved out. And yes, our hearts are partly broken. We're really working, my wife and I, to get used to the fact that they're gone. And they just didn't move across town. They moved 5 hours away, doggone it. They did not read the fine print when they moved in, evidently. I haven't decided yet if you see this big red plastic cup in the foreground here? I don't feel like that's a good element. And this is hash browns and looks like, I think, an egg back there. I don't think those are, I don't mind putting her sitting at a breakfast table. And I love her hands. I'm definitely going to do these precious little hands. But I don't know yet if I'm going to do that red cup. See, if I don't do the red cup, then I'm up a creek a little bit, because I have to paint this hand without a photograph. In fact, that's a good brings up a good topic, doesn't it? It's one of the downsides of extensive reliance upon photography, photo reference, which you do in buckets, as was an expression once for a while when I was a kid. Most fine artists also, not all, but most fine artists use photographic reference extensively. The problem is, what do you do when all of a sudden your photograph bails on you, like this right here? In that case, you better have done some pretty good anatomical studies. And my answer is no, I have not done enough. Of course, it's like doing anatomical studies. You never do enough, right? Is this obvious? You never feel like you've done enough anatomy studies. You just keep doing. I happened to, yesterday, I spent much of the day adding up my activities from last year. I have for the last 10 or so years, I wish I'd done this as a young man, but I didn't start till about 10 years ago. But for the last 10 years, at the end of every day, I record in a book the main activities that I did that day. And at the end of the year, I go back, and it took me hours. It's quite laborious. I go back and count up. Oh, look at, she's got one, I can see it through the glass. She's got one finger pointed up like that. That's nice. So I went back. Anyway, and in the course of doing that, I discovered that I did approximately 152 anatomical sketches last year. Now that's not very many. That begs a little explanation. Most anatomy you do in 30, 60, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and that kind of thing. And I did a lot of those that I didn't count. The 152 that I did were only sort of analytical drawings to help me teach anatomy. So I didn't count the gesture drawings. There may have been hundreds of those. But I did 152, like that could go into a book. I'm not saying I will, but if I were to ever publish a book on how to draw anatomy, these 152 illustrations are the kind that would go into that. How to draw hips, how to draw an eye, how to draw lips, how to draw a thigh, how to draw, I got a little poetry thing going here, don't I? Nips and tips. and lips and thighs and eyes. There, we got a little anatomical there all of a sudden. I mean, that's kind of scary, isn't it? Oh boy. So I'm not talking here much at all about what I'm doing. I'll say this. This is sort of the way I start very often doing a portrait. It's not the only way. It's not necessarily the best way. I have here a pretty good drawing of a cute 6-year-old girl. Unfortunately, it doesn't look exactly like Tali. So, and I'm working in oil. I toned the canvas in acrylic, and I'm working in oil. That gives me the benefit of being able to erase my lines, move my lines around very easily, and I find that's so I operate. In fact, I operate this way very much in all of my landscape painting and everything. I operate under the concept that it's easier to make corrections, easier to make edits than it is to slap down the first thing. So what I've done now is slap down the first inaccurate level. Now, from this point on, I need to start carefully analyzing and finding out where my inaccuracies are. Again, this is not the way everybody works. I know some good portrait painters, they just nail it right the first time. Man, I wish it was that good. But I'm not. I nail it, and I've said this often, and the number seems to come up just about right. About 40% of the time when I'm operating this way, my first pass, first slap down, looks, wow, that's pretty good. Unfortunately, this is not one of those 40 times. So what that means is then I just start letting my eye go around and around and around and around. I start making comparisons. In fact, very soon here, I will start just doing the simplest comparisons, like checking the pupil to the corner of her mouth. Okay, that's okay. This pupil, see, nope, this mouth goes, and I don't have the angle quite right, so little corrections. And I'm not going to keep painting till I'm finished. It'll be a couple hours, and I don't have the time or the energy or the inclination to paint for a couple hours. I want to do what I said in the title of this broadcast, which is starting an oil portrait or a portrait in oils. So that's all I'm going to do. Okay. I mean, I'll go for a little while longer here, but that's fulfilling. And then I don't know if I'm going to do another broadcast in a little while or not. That remains to be seen. I do have some responsibilities this evening. Pastoral, churchy responsibilities. Changed. So let me talk a little bit again about this. I might call it Adventures in Beauty. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see if that stands the test of time. What that allows me to do is to be more holistic. That is, to be more accurate or honest, or what's not honest, not the word, but with myself. In other words, for the last 16 years, almost all my broadcasts have been on the subject of art. It's very likely that here on out, my broadcasts will be about art, music, philosophy, worldview, history, science, literature. And that's why I, at least tentatively, am calling it Adventures in Beauty, because one of my hopes and expectations will be that I will do every broadcast, first of all, from, as I've already done this, but I would like to get better at it. Before I start every broadcast, I would like to have a little inner conversation inside me and to make sure that I am in my happy place. We'll talk about that. And then whether I'm doing music, and I'm sure I'll play, but I might, I don't know, well, we'll just see. I'm more likely to teach music, and again, that would be crazy, wouldn't it? You guys, all you artists, you don't care, you don't want to hear me teach music. Yep, that's right. So maybe I'll do Adventures in Beauty and then put a subtitle like music, literature, history, science. I don't know. I just made her really ugly. There. When in doubt, just wipe it out. Oh, it rhymes even, so it must be a good thing. All right, I'm going to say it again, since y'all out there being real coy, nobody's saying anything. And maybe it's because you're all new. I don't know where all my old friends are. They gave up on me. I'm truly afraid. I did 1,000 broadcasts with them, and then I fell off the earth. I did have one of you called me yesterday, or called me and texted me and said, Dan, I'm worried about you. Are you alive? So I had to call him up. We had a good long talk. Yes, I'm very much alive. More alive than ever, as a matter of fact. Very much enjoying the season of life that we're in. All right, before I go, let me show you a couple tools. They are not esoteric or secret. I should have gotten them out though. Oops, I thought, here it is. It's around here somewhere. All right. So this is a proportional divider, and but it's also just a pointer. Like, okay, if I want to measure from the bottom of her chin to the part in her hair, let's see. So this is a little bit bigger right now. Let's see if that's consistent all the way along. Pupil to pupil. Oh yeah, a little bit bigger. So looks like let's just go all the way across, hair to hair. That's the only one now that's the same size. Let's do some other comparisons. Let's do top of head to middle of eye line. Pretty close. All right, so I think what I'm going to do, so this is set up. I don't really need to, it's not, see, this comes apart. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes. And if you put the fulcrum here, for instance, then, oops, upside down. Then when these points are, say, 4 inches apart, then these points are about 2 inches apart. So it's a proportional, and the ratio will stay the same no matter how hard you put. But if you're going to, if the proportion is 1-to-1, which I believe it is here, then you don't really need. I can just go straight from the photograph to the painting. You see, so I'm not giving you a good example of what proportional dividers are for. But having said that, since I'm going to try to achieve a 1-to-1 ratio, I'm actually more likely to use a higher quality and more precise tool, simply because it's metal, it's a little more stiff, and the points here are razor sharp points, so they're much more precise. So what I'm likely to do then is just start redrawing. Now, if I do this, you understand, I've just taken a big step from drawing with no artificial means of support. Sounds like an old bra commercial. Sorry. I think that was in the 70s sometime. Sorry. This broadcast can just go downhill so fast, can it? Anyway, no artificial means of support. Just drawing like this. And as you see, I didn't do very well. Now, to give myself some, if I kept at it, I would get much closer. Right? But I'm tired of keeping at it. I'm going, what the heck? Let's just start cheating. As you know, I don't use the word cheating anymore because then that discourages people, right? So it's not cheating, it's legal. But, and besides, there's plenty of drawing still left to be done, even if I utilize this technique, right? So then I just start measuring everything and transferring all of my measurements from here to there. And indeed, many, many, many good artists employ tricks like this. What I advocate, for you old timers, this is like you've heard it 100 times. If you rely too extensively on these photomechanical, in this case mechanical, tricks, your drawing skills deteriorate. That's why I recommend at least start out the way I did today. Start out trying to draw it with no support whatsoever, with no technical, phototechnical tricks. Just see how close you can get, because the gears are grinding. Smoke's coming out of my ears. So I'm working very hard. I'm just telling you that I'm all right. I'm willing to bail now on the working hard, and work hard in a different way. Work hard by being very careful and precise and start trends. Like for instance, I just saw it right then. Just that here's a real obvious error. The Filstrom is the thing between your top of your lip and the bottom of your nose. That thing right there. I was pointing at myself. That thing right there. Okay, here it's just over 1/4 of an inch. And look, here I've got a whole 1/2 inch. So good grief. Either her nose is way too high, or her mouth is way too low. I don't know which one of those is. So a good clue would be, so well, let's measure from the bottom of her chin to the bottom of her teeth. Let's see how that comes out. Ooh, that's very accurate. Now that doesn't mean, at some point I have to decide which mark on this canvas I'm going to make my anchor point, and then I start going from there. So that means that it's likely that my nose here is way too high. But I've got a hunch, that her eyes are also too high. So everything here is going to change. And then you ask yourself, well, why did I waste all my time doing a bad drawing? Are you with me? The reason you wasted your time doing a bad drawing is kidneys. That's also a joke from probably the 60s. Brains. Work your brain. Work. Make it work. And then start making adjustments. And as I said, I'm not coming off looking like a very good artist, because I've done a terrible drawing here as far as capturing a likeness. And that's just one of the things. That's part of my broadcast. I'm willing to let you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And just be honest about where I'm at artistically. And in my defense, I'll say about 40% of the time, it seems to me, I manage to get pretty close with, and that's not a very good average, I wouldn't say. I mean, as an artist, it's like, that's a D plus or a C minus, isn't it? I mean, not, that's an E, 40%. But anyway, I'm not using the same scale as grade school, as grades in class. I think, let me check here. I think I've got the V, the inverted V, the A, I guess, of her parted hair is a little bit too low. Yeah, a little bit, not much, just a little bit. So once again, here's part of the advantage of working in oil. It's just real easy to make adjustments. All right, I'm going to wrap up this broadcast at this point. Thank you all for chatting with me. That's sarcasm, in case you couldn't tell. Wait, maybe something's wrong with my chat. That could be, couldn't it? Hey, hang on just a second. Maybe I've been ragging on you guys all this time, and actually you've been saying things. Nope. All right. Well, it is good to be back in the saddle, as they say. And I promise it won't be another month before I broadcast again. But I don't promise that next time I broadcast,